Hi, and welcome to this video on connecting your Business Central to SharePoint. My name is Eric from eFocus, and in this video I'm going to take you through the process of connecting the two systems. For us to do that, we need a Business Central. I got one right here, a sandbox setting in the cloud. I have access to what is known as the Azure portal, portal.azure.com. Let me actually make that a tad bigger for you guys. And I also have access to the SharePoint I want to visit. So all this starts inside Business Central. I will go in and find the SharePoint setup. There's actually two SharePoint setups. The Microsoft SharePoint connection setup is from the old on-prem setup, so do not use that one. SharePoint setup is the one you get when you install the Sharepoint Connector app from AppSource. The first thing we need to tell is the URL of our SharePoint, and I know that it's the hogart.sharepoint.com. This is my demo site, so I will fill that in. Then I need to give it a site name because one SharePoint site can have multiple sites. I'm just going to leave that blank because I'm on the main site. And I need to supply a client ID and a client secret. And this is where it gets a bit more complicated. There's also a field called the Callback URL, which we can see is just a URL to Business Central. I'm going to grab that and put it onto the clipboard, copy it into the clipboard, and then we're going into the Azure portal. Inside the Azure portal, what we want and what we need is something called the Azure Active Directory. This is the system that controls users, control access, and we're trying to gain access. What we're trying to do is actually gain a application access. So we'll go into what is known as app registrations. And I'll create a new one. I already have a few. And we'll call this for the SharePoint Connector demo. And for everybody in this organization. And I need to supply a redirect URI. A fancy way of spelling URL. And this is the one that we just copied into the clipboard earlier. I click register. So now my app registration is created, but we have not told what this registration actually gives access to. For that, we need to go into app permissions, but first we can see that we already have one of the fields we need, the client ID. So I can copy that into the clipboard, go back to my Business Central, paste it in here. So job halfway done. Excellent. Go back to the Azure portal and hit API permissions. And we can see that just by creating API permission, we get permission to the Microsoft Graph, but we need more permission. So we hit add a permission, we find SharePoint, and we want to have something known as a delegated permission. And the permission we need is allsites.manage. You can add more of these. You can look at the other options, and depending on how your SharePoint interaction goes, you might need more permissions than this. But as a good starting point, allsites.manage will get you to all the normal functionality. So add permissions, we have that. This permission, it takes just a couple of minutes sometimes to roll out and be actually effective, but we can go ahead and look at the other part we need. The other part we need was, let's go back to Business Central and see, it was called the client secret. In the Azure portal, we have something called certificates and secrets. So let's go in here and create a new client secret. I'll call it the SharePoint Connector demo again. And it should never expire. So I get a secret here. And the important bit here is that this secret will disappear from this screen as soon as we navigate away from it. So we need to copy it to the clipboard. I'll go back into Business Central, paste it in here. And we're done in Azure. We can go back and look at the overview and see that we have this one sitting here, and it's also sitting as one of my different app registrations I have. So I can go in here and I can remove this access from here. But all this is filled out. What remains is that I hit connect. And here's the thing that's important. You can see that please allow pop-ups from this page. If your browser is set to not allow pop-ups, this process will not work. So you'll get to this page and nothing happened. Close it, allow pop-ups, and hit connect again. I will connect with the user that is connected to my SharePoint. So the user I'm using now will be the user that connects the two systems. So now I'm just using my own user, but typically you would create a synchronization user or integration user, so you can see that that's the user that's connecting the two systems. We can see that I need to accept the permissions request, and the permissions request is for the SharePoint Connector demo, the one we just created. And I'll consent on behalf of my organization, accept this. And I need to log in again, because now we're actually going back and giving that information to Business Central. And this will just take a second or two. And we'll get a message here saying that authentication finished. Please close the window, and we can see that this one updated and says now connected to SharePoint. So our SharePoint is connected with Business Central. Business Central is connected with SharePoint. And we're ready to go into the next step, which is actually mapping our data inside Business Central to the folder structure in SharePoint. More about that in the next video. Thank you.